Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. Well, a few things to talk about today. After last Tuesday's late show, I skipped Monday because I was waiting to see what was going to be said about the Cleveland Browns hiring of Todd Monken as head coach. I wanted to see what would happen in the days that transpired afterwards, so that Tuesday's program was an emotional reading, and today is a little bit more getting an idea of what's actually going on. Uh, if anybody wants to be on the panel today, feel free. You can just hop on in. Just go over to if you're watching on YouTube, it's right there, right in the show description link. All you have to do is click on it, and it transports you immediately into Moo Moo Land. I'm coining a phrase, the Cleveland Bravens. All right. This is something that I'm starting. I've already stated for the record. If anybody uses this in their conversations, either anywhere on social media, you owe me a follow. Okay. On Twitter, or a subscription, which is free on YouTube. Right. The Cleveland Bravens. That's what we're getting. There's a good to it, and there's a not so good to it. I'm going to try to focus on the good about it to make me a little bit different than the incredibly growing masses of internet demagoguery that goes on and calls itself broadcasting. It's more broad chasing. You can't tell me that Sports Boy Tony isn't trying to get a little nookie. He's young. He only looks a little bit like a ferret, But I'm not after that because it's long gone. I mean, look at the color of my hair. Look at that. I've been doing this damn program since 2002? 2001, 2002. It's not pretty, folks. So Todd Monken is now the head coach, and he is asserting his will, which means anybody who is with him on the coaching staff with the Ravens, come on down. You're our next contestants on Jimmy Haslam Ruins Your Life. So what we're getting is George Warhop. Remember him? He 2009 to 2013. He was the offensive line guy. He was and gets very good reviews by previous Browns players from 09 to 2013, including the best offensive Hall of Fame lineman that the Browns had. So all things said and done, it's a positive. And let me explain why this is a positive. First of all, the way that I knew that Kevin Stefanski was just losing it completely is when you start replacing people with people who are just not part of what you do. If you bring in a wide receivers coach and it's like Chad O'Shea, and then Chad O'Shea finds out, well, there's really not going to be that much of a passing game in Cleveland, obviously, unless you're a tight end. So you give the guy a job, and he knows nothing about developing wide receivers, which is good because we didn't draft any, and he just wasted a bunch of time. And at that point, I realized that Kevin Stefanski had no intention of doing anything but his own flippin' way, and it was the wrong way. We also got the saddest replacement you could imagine for the great Bill Callahan. We get Dickerson, who Dickersoned around and ruined the whole concept of the offensive line. You're going to say, well, they were old. Yeah, they were old. But how did this guy make any of the younger guys better? He made them worse. I've never seen more mistakes from an offensive line. My goodness. So seeing George Warhop back in Cleveland after being here in 2009 to 2013, where we actually, there was some offensive line play back then for the Browns. Something that I've said over and over again about how do you succeed in the AFC North? How do you do that? And, people are saying, well, I think what we got to do is we got to find a quarterback with a cannon arm. And we got the next good idea those folks have, take this, shove it up your ass. Maybe it'll light up. It's the only idea you're going to have is trying to figure out how to get it out of your ass. The two teams at the top are kicking the shit out of us consistently. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Why? Because they had running games. Why? Because weather is not predictable in that part of the country. Why? Because it's fucking Ohio and Pennsylvania. And the Cincinnati Bengals still don't get it. That's the thing that's amazing. The one coach who still has his job. Where's their running game? Well, we thought we could get an additional 17 years out of Joe Mixon. And it's like you just hold your big cow head and say, why? The Browns finally have, and I feel bad saying this with my love for Nick Chubb, but we finally have two young running backs that look like they could amount to something here. Assuming Judkins heals okay from his surgery off season. And Dylan Sampson looked like he's a burner, man. He can move. He's fast. If you give him holes, he will take more. He's not going to carry a lot of people with him. Think back in the day of a Greg Pruitt kind of guy. Although Pruitt was a little stronger than he maybe. But the guy who can turn a small crease and get into the secondary quickly. I haven't seen enough of Dylan Sampson to tell you that he's got the footwork to break things open. And I know he doesn't have the power to do it, but you open holes for him. And as the change of pace runner with Quinshon Judkins, there's a lot that a defensive line would have to think about. So this is a move in the right direction. Giving us a 40-year-old quarterback who had a history of having a strong arm but a great running game behind him didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And continually going up against teams that have good running backs, and all we have are people who are either hurt or we have no offensive line, and we have nobody instructing young offensive linemen how to get better. Here's the truth of offensive linemen, folks. 1, takes them a while to mature. Only the greats come out in their first year and play inordinately well. The guys who are like the top, high first round guys who are can't miss kind of players. Those people like Joe Thomas, I mean, you knew that they were going to be great players before they even played. So usually it takes time. The Browns are in a position where they're going to draft offensive linemen because sure as hell the people we have haven't been able to do shit. But the question is this. Were they bad because they're just bad, or were they bad because Dickerson was Dickersoning around and didn't have anything to add to the landscape? And he was following Bill Callahan, who knew what the hell he was doing. What we find out about Jim Schwartz is, guy was a defensive coordinator who's done it for a long time. He knows what the fuck he's doing. He's got an idea of what he's trying to accomplish. However, you bring in an unknown commodity and, doesn't know what he's doing. Look at what Saleh is doing, with the 49ers. Look at what he's doing. He gets a head coaching job with the Jets, and of course, born to fail. But he jumps right back into that defensive coordinator position, and bam, he's successful right away. Because he knows what the hell he's doing. The next best thing we could have gotten to Callahan is Warhop. He's been around. He's seen the wars. 29 years of experience for this guy. And the fact that he coached Joe Thomas to 4 first-team All-Pro selections means something. Player meant something too. And in his 2 seasons as the Ravens offensive line coach, they were ranked 3rd in pass block win rate and 7th in run block win rate. And again, the Ravens were going in the wrong direction. You could see this happening early in the season, not just when their overrated quarterback went down with an injury, but they didn't have the same, it's like you have Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry's been in the league and taken a lot of hits. He can still run real well, but he's a guy you got to have blocking up front because he's not good when he's not elusive. Let's put it that way. He gets up ahead of steam and he's bad news. But too much, getting caught in the backfield kind of stuff at his previous stops. He had a hell of a year this year. And the offensive line was opening up running opportunities. Problem was that the quarterback didn't keep up his end of the deal. And we know that the quarterback didn't either. The entire offensive concept of the Ravens looked completely out of sync. They lost having good wide receivers and relied on tight ends too much. And basically, they went to hell the same way so many organizations do, which is selling their souls to one player. We sold our souls for Deshaun Watson. You know it. I know it. All right. The second you go down on your knees and start blowing one guy like Lamar Jackson, you know that the team's going to go, woo, because there's no focus except, well, we got to keep this guy. We got to keep this guy. We got to keep him happy. You see, I'm happy that we have a choice at quarterback right now. I'm happy about that. Let them all work. There is no motivation with Kevin Stefanski whatsoever. He wasn't trying to make people better. He was trying to make people do things his way. And that doesn't work. What we have in Todd Monken is a guy who's kind of got a more disciplinary approach. I talked about this on Tuesday's program. It can be good in the short term, and sometimes it can lose players. But right now, I suppose we have a bunch of guys who need a good whooping. We can't have, trade me. If I start hearing that shit, from Myles Garrett, it's like Giannis in Milwaukee. You try to build a team around Giannis Antetokounmpo, and what happens? Things start going downhill. The players start getting older. Guys like Middleton, you have to trade them away. They're not good anymore. And then the team takes a little backward step. And the next thing, Giannis wants to be traded because he's a superstar. And I don't want him in Cleveland. Fuck no. He's old. And he's getting old fast. He slows everybody down. He wants to steamroll people in the paint. Deshaun Watson, I could care less about. I mean, really. The two quarterbacks that we have are the two quarterbacks we're going to have. And if you don't believe it yet, look at who we hired. The first thing is running game and offense. But you're not going to win in Cleveland playing outdoors by heaving the ball down the field over and over and over again. If you don't have the trenches covered, if you aren't running the football, you ain't going to win home games. You ain't going to win the away games. You got to beat Pittsburgh. You got to beat Cincinnati, and you got to beat the Ravens. And the Ravens right now are more beatable than ever because they're lost. Harbaugh figured, I'm going to get all my assistants in New York. And the assistant said, the Giants? Nah. If I have a better opportunity, why in the fuck would I want to go there? And I don't even know who in the hell they brought in. Greg Brady? Is he part of the Brady bunch? What do they fucking bring in there? And how are they going to turn their fortunes around? How is that going to make Lamar Jackson better? But it's not about that. It's keeping him happy. So I'm not worried about the Ravens anymore. Overrated. And the Steelers? They have no passing game. Their quarterback, goofy guy, and a guy who's old and crotchety and doesn't have the arm anymore. And the running game, not there anymore. As negative as we all are as Browns fans, because we're Browns fans, things are looking mighty wide open. I don't think Zach Taylor's going to lead Cincinnati to a Super Bowl, do you? We have an opportunity to reinvent what the Browns are. If Jimmy Haslam gets the fuck out of the road, I don't even want to see anything resembling that hick. I don't want anything. I want to see his face. Let these guys do what they do. Let Monken yell and scream in the face of these offensive linemen and say, we're drafting offensive linemen. You're expendable if you keep jumping off sides, early motion, if you keep holding. I would have all the film, and you can bet Monken's going to have all the film and saying this shit is the shit we can't have happening. Not we got to be better. It's like, if you don't get better, you're the fuck out of here. It's time for that. It's time. So I'm happy with this aspect of it. And Warhop, you got to listen to him because he knows what he's talking about. And these offensive linemen haven't been getting any help. Believe me. You know what the worst thing you can say is about an organization? If you're a Major League Baseball team and you have bullpen injuries and you've got to field guys to come out and get you through those middle innings, and you don't have anyone who's capable, you fucked up. Got no backup. The one thing good about the Guardians is they have pitchers in their minor league system. They can always bring those guys up. But what do the Cleveland Browns have? And the answer, look at what was starting at the end of the year. There was no cohesiveness. They didn't even know what they were supposed to be doing. I, honest to God, don't know if they simply can't do it. They didn't look like they were trying very hard to be. That ain't going to cut it with Monken. And it ain't going to cut it with Warhop either. These guys are either going to get themselves together or they're going to be out of Cleveland in a big furry hurry. This I like very much. Somebody has to do this. And the Browns now have requested an interview with the Ravens offensive assistant, Danny Breyer, to join the Cleveland Bravens. You might remember him. He's a graduate of the University of Akron. And he's a guy who works with tight ends. And that's important when you have a running game, but it also is important when you have a guy like Harold Fannin Jr. That'd be nice. If we have somebody who really understands the position and can make these people better players, that makes all the sense in the world to me. For his part, Monken, who is a slave driver, he is a guy who is going to go in, and it's going to be very different. There ain't going to be no trips to West Virginia before the season begins, so you can hit the hot tub and the steam shower. There ain't going to be none of that shit. He's going to work them hard outside until they're ready to fall over. He's going to find out who wants it and who doesn't. This I like. If you're wondering about Warhop, my goodness, before the Ravens, it was the Texans, the Jaguars, the Buccaneers, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Cardinals, the Rams. I mean, it's unbelievable how many places he's been. You're saying, well, why is that? Does he suck? And the answer is no, because every time a new head coach comes into these organizations, you can look at the Texans as one a situation there. You know, the Texans in 2022, you know, they're going to start all over again. The Jaguars in 2019 start all over again. The Buccaneers in 2014 start all over again. We haven't even gotten Baker Mayfield yet. The 49ers in 2005, the Cowboys back in 2003. These were teams, they brought in new head coaches, and Warhop is always there to help. But what happens is, if those coaches lose their job relatively quickly because they're with shitty organizations like the Texans, the Jaguars, and the Buccaneers, they're not going to have a job long either. So the fact that Warhop continues to get work in the NFL will tell you something good about what he does. So I have some positive reasons to be positive regarding at least people being on the same page. I got the impression before that, I don't know, there was only Kevin Stefanski's page and nobody else was on it except for Kevin Stefanski. That's kind of the feeling that I had. Now, you try to get some cohesiveness. It also tells me that there's going to be some drafting done for the offensive line and wide receivers as well. It's just necessary. You got to have wide receivers who want to play. And quite honestly, Monken is not going to put up with Jerry Jeudy. He's not going to put up with that shit. That's the beauty of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. We hate to admit it, but the reason they beat us is because the people that didn't do it the correct way, that wins for them, didn't play. And they didn't make it, and they didn't hang around Pittsburgh very long. You might be a guy like George Pickens who can catch the football, but if you're a fucking head case and you think you're more important than the team, Mike Tomlin kicked his ass off the team. And now with Pittsburgh having new guy in there, it's going to be interesting to see how the Steeler mentality holds up. That's why I want a running game. What happens if you run the ball at the Steelers next year and you win? All of the shit about the Steelers being, oh, they're the steel curtain defensively, and God, they're physical, and they're tough guys. That goes away in a heartbeat, believe me. And the coach will be blamed, and his staff will be blamed, and the players will be blamed. And the Steelers weren't any good under the end regime of Tomlin anyway. They got to have a new quarterback in-house. It's interesting the way that the AFC North is playing out. As far as Jim Schwartz is concerned, what I said on Tuesday, if you didn't catch the program, was if he did, in fact, walk around the building flailing his arms and saying, "Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. I'm not coming back," that makes him a little fucking child, and I would fire him anyway. Let him go. You don't need that. That's the kind of shit you don't need. But Jim Schwartz is a pro. And if Jim Schwartz doesn't get a head coaching job, and I understand he's disappointed, he's not a head coach. He has no offensive understanding. And look at what's happening in the league right now. All of the vestiges of the Patrick Mahomes days are gone. The, oh, wow, they got Lamar Jackson days are gone. Defenses have adjusted. If you can't run the football in 2026, you're not going anywhere. The way you get your passing game going is through a running game. There was a time when you could just pass, and you had the fastest guys on the field, and that was great. And an elusive quarterback who would escape. Lamar Jackson. Never a great thrower. But so there was that. It ain't that way anymore. Got to run the football first. It was funny. I was reading something by some idiot who wrote something, Josita Anderson. ESPN. I want opportunities for women in sports. I really do. Especially in play-by-play. I really want to see women succeed, who understands the game and who's great at calling a game. And I know she's out there. I know. Nobody's looking hard enough, but I know she's out there. Josita Anderson says, I was thinking about this, and maybe the smartest thing to do is to bring Schwartz back and make him half head of defense and make Monken half head of offense, and you'd have two head coaches. To which I say, maybe you're good at giving head, but don't start this shit. What are you going to do? You're going to give them a participation trophy too? Business doesn't work this way. You make decisions. People have jobs. They have to do them. This is not trying to please a little 7-year-old hitting a baseball off a fucking batting tee. Please. Jim Schwartz is a grown man. He either wants to work or he doesn't want to work. He's good at what he does. I'd love to have him back. The defense would love to have him back. Let the Browns take care of him. Take care of him in the way you can take care of him. It can be done. All things can be done. If it's true that he did that, well, he was emotional. Whitney Houston used to get that way too. So emotional. But let him come to his senses and realize it's better to work than not to work, and to work with people that you're used to working, and nobody's going to bother him. Todd Monken is not going to pester the hell out of Jim Schwartz. It's not going to happen. Here's another plus. Bubba Ventrone's gone. And the things that I read on social media are incredible. The Rams picked up Bubba Ventrone as their special teams coordinator. It's unbelievable. The Rams were 31st in special teams, and they hired the guy who was 32nd. Those are the things that make you just want to just choke the life out of somebody. It's such a plus that Bubba Ventrone is gone. People can breathe easier. I bet you about maybe 5,000 season tickets were sold when Bubba Ventrone went someplace else. The fan base breathes a little bit easier. People are not going to have a stroke every time we have to kick a ball. I think it's all positive. And, the fact that Tommy Rees went with Kevin Stefanski, Tommy Rees did nothing in Cleveland. Tommy Rees is trying to become part of a tree, so he will eventually get his opportunity. He's a young man, and so he's willing to stay in Kevin's shadows, which is why Kevin wanted him. Something? A little of both, Tony, but the Cleveland Bravens is good. That's good. That was like when Kellen Winslow Jr., my nickname stuck. It actually made it to ESPN. The only thing a cow has ever said that made it on national television when I named him the Soldier of Misfortune. But these are the Cleveland Bravens, and it's all for the better. I want toughness. You got to have trench warfare to win in the conference that we're in and in the division that we're in. Yeah, you just have to. Let's see what Roger is saying. Roger 51. I just want Schwartz to stay as defensive coach. I didn't want him as head coach. His name shouldn't even have come up in the head coaching search. He was fine where he is. And that's the amazing thing. That's what I call the right of ascension. And people, let's be honest. Jim Schwartz is not a guy who's going to sit at the family Thanksgiving table and ask if he can have seconds. He's going to fucking grab them. He sees an opportunity. And like Steve Winwood, when you see a chance, you take it. So he figured, I'm going to get my name up there for consideration. Damn it. And anyway, as Jimmy Haslam, I might fool him into doing this. He's dumb enough. But I agree with you, Roger. Completely agree with you. I want Schwartz to stay. But not with an attitude where he feels that he's been somehow belittled. For every job there is in the world, there are underlings who don't get promoted to that higher position. And if every person who went through that just quit their jobs, my God, we'd have a bunch of stalled careers in this country. That's not the way to go about it. So I do. I want him to stay. Maybe he'll think better. And I'm not even sure of what he did. To be honest with you, people make shit up all the time. I go through my goddamn Twitter account, up and down. I get nothing but AI films of cats driving cars. I mean, it's like, is this what we've come to? Oh, yup. Oh, yup. There you go. Kellen Winslow's at a high security California penitentiary. They went from a tight end to a wide receiver. You got that right. He was born to be a wide receiver. Joe Flacco is a Pro Bowler. Why even have the game? I agree. And do you know why they named him? Because, it's not a game anymore. It's just going to be a bunch of festivities and, but what they're going to do is they're going to have, the cones, but you have to do them in a walker. Why Joe Flacco? Why Shedeur Sanders? How are these people being named Pro Bowlers? Flacco was one. Shador never yet has been. And you know why? Because when you take away an actual game and replace it with ceremonial bullshit, you're going for ratings. And that's all the NFL knows about is money, money and ratings, because it brings in advertising dollars and more money, 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 money. That's why. I'm not as negative about Shador as you are, Tony. I want to see what happens. And I thought Monken said something very nice about Shador. Actually said it to him. He said, God, your dad's an asshole. No. Sorry. He said, we're going to draft you 141st. You told us you didn't want to be sitting behind Lamar, which now may be a bad move because I think Lamar's going. But at any rate, so the Browns got you at 144. So you see, we're together. It was meant to be. And Shador said, praise Jesus, praise. Yeah. I was walking my dog through the neighborhood today. I'm not proud of this neighborhood necessarily. It's a gated community. I'm not a gated community kind of guy, and I'm absolutely vulgar compared to my neighbors. Of course, I'm vulgar compared to a lot of people. And there's this beat up pickup truck that was about from 1973 with a big flag that looks like it's 35 years old. And it says, Jesus. And I'm driving up and down every road in this gated community in which we live. And, they don't allow solicitation, like people can't just come up to your door and start leaving shit on your door. You can't do that in the gated community. I have nothing against Jesus. He's just all right with me. Yeah. My problem is keep it to yourself. We don't need to be reminded. If we're there, we're there. And if we're not, we're sinners. So after I saw this guy on like the 3rd Street doing circles and his window was down, I just looked at him and said, Jesus Christ, and just walked away. So he couldn't say I said anything bad to him. Believe me, I have no, I just don't know. Shouldn't you be working? Like, this is what you do. He's like, you know what it was like? It's like he was like a religious DoorDash person. He's a driver for Jesus. I don't know. I'm just having fun. Don't take me seriously, Roger. No, believe me, Jesus did do nothing except he invented and created a new way of believing. And to be very honest with you, if you read what he said, I agree with it. Not being practiced today, but I agree with it. I did not crash my recumbent trike, Tony. An animal ran out of the woods in South Carolina and bashed in the mechanism that controlled my steering. It knocked my foot off the pedal, and the foot hit the ground and got sucked under the trike. If you need to know. And now I have a knee replacement, and I don't ride in the woods anymore. I ride through the land of Jesus. Amen. Hey, Pat Jigramson. All praise to the white hand of the sky, our overlords. No, 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 no. There is a higher source somewhere. I just haven't found it yet. I'm harmless when it comes to stuff like that because I was raised in a Jewish family. And, you know, the expectation wasn't going to heaven because Jews don't believe in heaven and hell. You see, but the weight of expectation is that I make a lot of money. It was tough being a kid when you're 6 years old and somebody's saying, you're going to have to make a living one day. I would have preferred the pickup truck with the Jesus flag, to tell you the truth. So you see, I'm not serious about much of anything. All right, let's move along. So I am happy about the Cleveland Browns. I am happy about what's going on because at least it shows a direction. Now we will see whether they can pull this off or not. Where do I think Giannis is going? Straight to hell. I really don't know, and I don't care. What I do care about is the Cleveland Cavaliers. What I can tell you about Giannis is if he's so fucking great, why isn't his team better? They are tanking right now with him. He isn't the kind of guy who is, and I'm going to compare him to some people. If you're talking about Luka can beat you from three. He can get into the paint. He can get a shot off. He's fat and lazy, but he's not a great defensive player. But he can do that. The younger Giannis could handle the ball better, but now he's just about bump and grind. He's reached what I call the mid-Shaq kind of thing, where it's like, get the ball down to me or give it to me at the top of the key, and I'm just going to run people over, and I'll get the call because I'm Giannis. He doesn't make teams better. Not in this NBA. Let him score his goddamn 2 points. We'll get a 3 on the other end. It's a different league, man. It's a completely different league now. The Cavaliers may be close to doing something, which I find very interesting. And I have something in my studio here because I want to give credit to where all credit is due. The people at realcavsfans.com, I have a long kind of association with because of the late owner and good old RCF Ben, who passed away in 2024. And they still put some interesting, good stuff on Twitter. They really do. And their account, I want to read this and give it all due credit to the people at realcavsfans.com. And I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing it to pimp somebody. I'm doing it because I thank people who give me knowledge that I do not have. The Cavaliers and the Lakers are definitely talking, okay? This is obvious. But what are they talking about? And how could they conduct a trade? And this explains it in relatively simple terms. The Lakers are in the first apron. They're hard capped and $977,000 under the first apron. This may not mean much to a lot of people. The Cavs are in the second apron. That means they cannot aggregate. They cannot take back more money in a deal. Now, stay with this, and you'll understand where we're at. The Lakers are hard capped. They cannot exceed the hard cap and can take back a maximum of $977,000 more than they send out in a trade. They also have to be roster compliant. That means 14 minimum roster spots. The Cavs are in the second apron. We've heard that over and over again, meaning they cannot take back more money than they would send out in a trade, and they cannot aggregate unless they finish the deal in the first apron. And Dan Gilbert doesn't want to do that. And here's the interesting thing. The target thereafter is DeAndre Hunter. The Lakers want DeAndre Hunter. And I can understand it after having watched the Lakers just get blown out by the Cavaliers. They need some offensive spark. LeBron has gotten old, and there are people not picking up the slack. Hunter has $1.25 million in unlikely to be earned incentives. And believe me, these are all, it's like accountancy stuff. These are performance incentives that are classified as unlikely because they were not met the year before. $1 million for being Defensive Player of the Year, $250,000 that he would play in more than 70 games, and a finals appearance. All of these incentives factor into trades. It's shortened out as being ULTBE. They're not considered a cap hit unless they are met at the end of the year, which then they are converted, but are counted toward apron compliance. Now, Hunter's $23.3 million salary would be used for trade matching purposes. His ULTBE incentives would be counted against apron calculations. So to do the math, $24 million or $24.55 million to be exact. This means a trade has to be salary matching compliant and apron compliant by the end of this deal. And that's why a third team has to be brought into this in order to get this whole thing moving. We know who the likely candidates always are. Where did we send Colin Sexton? Utah. Or Brooklyn. Teams that are going nowhere, folks. The facilitating third team. That would make the math work, where the Cavs don't take back more money than they send out, and the Lakers would be salary and apron compliant with Hunter's salary. So what it amounts, can the trade actually occur between these two teams, or are we wasting our time? The answer is yes, it can happen. And there's a way of getting it done. Adou Thiero is the player who is being talked about, who has about a $1.2 million deal that could even things out. And a third team could jump into the whole thing. Second apron teams like the Cavaliers cannot use previously created trade exceptions. Cavs have two, one for Niang and the other from Isaac Okoro. They can use a minimum contract exception. This means they can accept a minimum salary player as part of a deal, even if it means the Cavs are technically taking on more money. And this is crazy. This is why it's all accounting shit. Because second apron teams are allowed to sign minimum contracts. So therefore, it's an extension of that rule. It's real confusing stuff. The problem for the Cavaliers, only one open roster spot, and that's probably going to be Naquan Tomlin's. So if the Cavs were to take on a combination of players for Hunter, in addition to Thiero, they would need to either waive, buy out, or make room, since they'd be over the 15-man roster limit. So this is tricky, but it can be done. I feel bad for DeAndre Hunter because he's a talented player, but man, when the lights were turned on bright, he just faded. He just lost his confidence. He played really well last game. He did against the Lakers, which I found interesting. That was a showcase if there ever was one. That's the best DeAndre Hunter has played this year. It's like, oh, he wants to go to the West Coast. All they have to do now is figure out a way. No, I'm not gonna. No. I don't want to bring up his injured college teammate who he enjoyed playing with. That's a low blow. I really want DeAndre Hunter to succeed, but it's not happening in Cleveland. And the thing with the Cavaliers that I can say is trade is likely. And Dalton Connect's name is connected to it. Dalton Connect is a guy who rumor had it he wanted to be traded out of Los Angeles, and then that was denied by the organization. But guy played in 76 games last year, and he just isn't playing at all this year. He's a guy who was almost 38% three-point shooter. He's a guy who can give you range, and that might be a name that the Cavaliers will bring in because of the uncertainty of Max Strus's situation. A guy who can move, get himself, between him and Sam Merrill, can find a shot. Because right now, I'm a little nervous about Max Strus. I'm wondering if that whole surgery was a failure. This is taking way, way too long. And that's a little bit worrisome. Yeah, and that is what some people are saying. I don't think those two players, to be very honest with you, but I could see Dalton Connect. I could see that as possibly being something. And that's because of the Max Strus situation. It's interesting. And this is correct. The NBA, the Lakers will somehow, some way end up with Giannis and Hunter out of this. That's possible. I don't care about them. I'm looking at the Cavaliers right now, and I'm saying, we got some stuff here. In what has been a really disappointing season in so many ways, I'm starting to see some bright spots. We got a guy who's 6'8", 6'9", and Naquan Tomlin can't shoot the ball for shit. But he's a 6'8", 6'9", long wingspan, fast second jumper, Matthew Dellavedova. He's a fucking pest. Watching him strip Luka at half court twice and go the opposite direction and tomahawk it, I was out of my chair applauding. And what he said after the game, I liked even more. They asked him, what's it like being out there with a player like LeBron? And he goes, hey, man, I'm just a dog. When I see him or anyone else, I just think food. Gotta love a guy like that. And then we got Jalen Tyson. Jalen Tyson is following an accelerated Jimmy Butler curve, if you're not paying attention. Jimmy Butler was a number 20 pick in the NBA draft back when. And everyone said the only way he's going to make the team is if he plays defense. And so that's what Jimmy Butler did. He played defense. He didn't work offense into his game until 4 or 5 years down the road. He finally got an all-pro title on his resume. I'm looking at Jason Tyson, and I'm saying, he expected to score the basketball when he was playing at Texas Tech and at Cal. I get it. But they told me the only way you're going to make this team is if you learn how to play defense. And sure enough, he did. But look at this. The guy has developed a three-point shot. And now he's creating off the dribble, and he's got a floater, and he's passing the ball. He makes mistakes still. Too many turnovers. Well, but you got to like what you see, because That's what we wanted from Isaac Okoro, a guy who was a stopper, who was tough, who was of a mindset of physicality, but who could make open threes when he's not being guarded. Really great. That's not all we got. I mean, I'm looking at Proctor, and I'm not hearing a lot of people talking about this guy. But this is Bradley Beal curve time. Bradley Beal shot 38% from three-point in his rookie year. That's a fact. And people said, man, we expected more of him coming out of Florida. We expected more. He was a hyped player. Well, he really did have a great stroke now, didn't he? I mean, it just didn't show up because the speed of the game, when you play that first year, you're trying to figure out how you're going to play defense. And there's so much going through a rookie's head. It's really hard to find yourself. And for the better part of now, since the beginning of the season, Proctor's had a number of problems. One, just getting out on the floor. CPJ has been getting time, and deservedly so. But constant injuries to Darius Garland, forcing more guard play. What I like about Proctor is that he's got some size. He's got a reason for being in the pros. He wouldn't have gone to Duke and been part of that whole thing and recruiting class if he couldn't play basketball. And he can flat out shoot. But for him, it's finding the shot. What shot are you going to find? In the beginning of the year, when he would get on the floor, he threw up some real Lulus, things that I know you shouldn't have shot that ball. He's finding his spots, and you can see it. He's not a great creator with the basketball at this point. He moves real well, but he's not a great ball handler. He doesn't know how to convert being on the perimeter to getting into the paint and scoring like, Darius Garland can do. He hasn't developed a teardrop to make people and keep them honest. But in the Cavaliers' offensive scheme, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, you keep moving, you play defense. And he's a hard worker. Proctor is a very hard worker. He's learning. But now his season 3-point average is up to nearly 38%. And I think this guy is going to be very good. I think the Cavaliers are in a real good situation. And yeah, for all the hype and the talk about the New York Knicks this and what a great start the New York Knicks got off to, that's right. We're like a half a game behind the New York Knicks. And it has been a disappointing season. We're still not quite, the last game was kind of the out of the ordinary thing because we were, played first half and it was just kind of eh. And then in the third quarter, instead of falling apart, we just blew them off the doors off them. Cavaliers have been a team that gets leads and blows leads this year. But part of this, it's interesting because Darius Garland isn't playing. And one thing that I can also say, the physicality of the team has picked up. Darius Garland doesn't work out. I keep saying it over and over again. He's not strong enough. But by inserting Jalen Tyson, who's not tall, but is willing to acquit himself physically, and Naquan Tomlin, who is just going to keep on bothering you until he does something decent, and looking at him throwing up 3-point shots, it's kind of like, no. But he's got to work on that. It's funny, his release is a spinny kind of thing. Doesn't have enough air underneath it. It's a lot like Isaac Okoro shooting a flat ball. It's very difficult making that shot in the NBA, shooting a flat ball. You got to have some air underneath it. But he strips balls from people. He gets rebounds. He comes out of nowhere. He gets to the passing lanes with those long arms. He does really good things. Tyson was great. He got LeBron to shove off, and the referee called the foul on LeBron. It's like, look, you're 41 years old now. You're not going to get that call anymore. And the gesture that Tyson made of doing this, pointing the other way down the floor, I was laughing my ass off. It's like, hey, we got some guys with some fucking attitude. And that's what's been lacking for the Cavaliers. They got to grow balls. Biggest complaint with Jared Allen is the biggest complaint with Evan Mobley. We played our best game of the year without Evan Mobley on the floor and without Darius Garland on the floor. Does that mean I want to trade him? No, I'm not going to go that far. But man, it tells you that you got to be physical to succeed in the league. But the type of physical players that you have, it's not like the days where Steven Adams could stand under the rim and push somebody. You got to be able to get up and down the floor. And it's the reason Giannis is not worth it. Whatever the price is that's being asked, he's not worth it. He doesn't get up the floor as good as he used to. And how could he? And the future is not Victor Wembanyama either. I'm watching him play, and you know what I see? I see the big 7'2" Evan Mobley. He shoots better, but he's still a stick. You got to be able to get up and down the floor. Give me people with leaping ability. Look at the Thunder. Give me people who are able to motor up and down the court with speed and have verticality. That's what you need. A young LeBron James would still thrive in this environment, going up and down the floor and elevating. At 41, he can't do it anymore. Now, I'm going to tell you something else before I get out of here. The whole thing about LeBron, and I know that it's a very polarizing thing, talking about LeBron James. It's kind of like talking about Shedeur Sanders. So there are certain people who just, they somehow, if you mention their names, we have this bipolar reaction from the fan base. And everybody knows that I believe that he was the greatest player who ever played the game. And he's proven it by continuing to play at an incredibly high level up to the age of 40. The 41st year here, you can really start seeing some of the wheels come off. And LeBron isn't going to be able to pick where he goes at this point. It might be the best thing that he can do is just ride out his contract in LA so that he can make as much money as he can. And she has plenty, I'm sure. But I saw something, and I've seen it before. When the Cavaliers lost to the Celtics in the playoffs all those years ago, and LeBron walked off the court and he took off his jersey and tossed it. The next thing we knew, he was taking his talents to Miami. And everybody was like, oh, God. And I said, all right, that's the way LeBron said, fuck this shit. And you yank your jersey off. And then in Miami, when all the fun ended and the titles ended, there was a timeout at the end of a playoff game that was going to be the game that they lost. And we're going to be out of the playoffs. Coach was talking. And LeBron was gazing around and was somewhere else. And I went on the air the very next day and I said, LeBron is coming back to Cleveland. And I took shit for that. And the reason I took shit was because a lot of people didn't want him back because he was a traitor who did that stupid television interview, taking his talents. And I took shit for it. Then you knew he was going to go to Los Angeles. He had business interests in Los Angeles. His son was playing basketball on the West Coast, so you knew where it was going. You knew what was happening there. Didn't take a genius to figure that out. But what I noticed is when he walked off the floor after the Cavaliers game, you saw him when they gave him his video tribute, and he was crying. And he's not the kind of guy you expect to cry, and he's not the kind of guy who's going to act that part. And after the game, He wasn't dapping it up with everybody. The other players are all getting together, LeBron walked off the court. He did everything except take the jersey off. In fact, he spoke to no one. He just wandered off. He's done in Los Angeles, folks. He's done. And there's only one place he can go. And I don't know how. But that game told me that he's not going to be with the Lakers. And it's not the Lakers have that bad a team, I mean, record-wise, but man, you saw the deficiencies in that team. Luka is not a leader. He's a great scorer, but man, you can see why he got fat and all that. Now people are blaming the floor, the Cavaliers being an elevated floor. If he didn't hop 5 times after he shoots a fadeaway, he wouldn't have injured his fucking foot. I get tired of, people protecting these athletes. I mean, for God's sakes, act responsibly. But if you're not consistently in a position to be in good physical condition, and you looked at him after he twisted his ankle, and it was like the world was coming to an end. It was like somebody removed his penis. Where's the camera? Fuck that shit. Not a leader. I've seen LeBron James, man, twist his ankle so fucking bad. Nobody in the world would be able to play on that motherfucker, and he'd get up and play on it. Maybe he'd miss a week and a half after that. He'd finish the goddamn game. He's like Jim Brown. You could get a tremendous hit on Jim Brown and knock him to the ground, but he got up as slow as anybody, but he got up every time, and you knew that he did that just to get under your skin. It's like, something? You think you're going to knock me out of the game? Fuck you. I'm going to keep getting up. That's LeBron. No, I don't want to have anything to do with his son. And it's nothing against Bronny, but, better the name on a paper towel than on a jersey. You know how that goes. Will he come back to Cleveland? Dan Gilbert would have him. And the reason he'd have him is because LeBron knows what it takes to win championships. And no one on this roster does. And it doesn't matter how many minutes he'd play. He would be able to communicate with players and get through to them and get them to take their off-season conditioning as seriously as Donovan Mitchell does. If a 42-year-old player can come back and play 23rd year in the league, fuck. You listen to somebody like that. I think that Dan Gilbert would take him back. I just have no idea how that would be structured. I should ask the people at realcavsfans.com. They understand that shit. I sure as hell don't. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. To encapsulate everything, I'm more happy about the Browns that at least they're showing an interest in getting a running game going in the AFC North where it's necessary. I'm sure that Judkins and Sampson will be very, very happy. I'm sure that Fannin is happy that a tight ends coach who knows what the hell he's doing will be there, and that an offensive line coach is going to weed out the lazy motherfuckers who refused to play hard last year, and we're going to have a team that at least plays hard and doesn't try to get better, actually performs better. We can only hope. I will be back again on Monday. Thanks for tuning in, and until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.